In a continuation on my campaign mechanics beginner's guide, I want to go into the actual combat mechanics of Total War Warhammer 2. As you probably well know, the war portion, or at least the combat portion of the game, is a, well, huge portion of that game. So in this video today, I'm going to go over some basics that really I think I even discovered in the last year or two, and I've been playing Total War games for 10 or 15 years. So I'm going to touch on stuff like basic formations, keyboard commands that'll help you move around the battlefield easily, control groups, how to deal with different battlefield options by holding down the spacebar button. I'm also going to talk about how to do a lot of selections and movements, as well as how the unit types work, how they counter each other, and how you can really set your army up to better win in all of your campaign games. Now, if you are playing campaign, as you progress through the difficulties, the beginning portions of them, as far as your easy, normal, and hard, are not going to be that challenging when it comes to the battlefield. You more often than not will almost always win as long as you're just playing somewhat competently from a tactical standpoint. And I can't really give you those kind of tactics. You're going to have to read stuff like Sun Tzu's book on the art of war. But if you get onto the very hard or legendary portions of the game, and especially if you're tweaking with the battle difficulty when you start your campaign, these will hopefully really help you out. And they can also be translated to any kind of multiplayer battles when you hopefully make that jump into that very challenging portion of the battle system. So this video, while I would like for it to be a very small and short one, I think it will be a little bit longer of a video. So do hunker down and let's get into the combat mechanics for Total War Warhammer 2. All right, here we are on the combat map with our Empire faction. And we're going to be using the Empire as our guinea pig here because they're a nice regimental standard faction with nice kind of neat, easy formations. So this is going to help me discuss basic formations to start out with. We'll get into unit types and so on and so forth later, and we'll actually start battle at the end of this video to kind of put everything together. I can't guarantee I'll win because I'll be showing these things to you piecemeal, and it'll kind of distract what's called my micromanagement of my forces. So let's take a look here at this basic formation of our army. So you can see in our front line, we have all of our greatswords. Greatswords are going to do a lot of damage to anything they get up close and personal with. And you can also see something else with our greatswords. We've kind of distanced them out. This allows for our army, if I'm taking a look at it from a high kind of bird's eye view, to take up a lot of the deployment field, allowing my opponent less chance to wrap around me and allowing for my opponent less chance to break through my formation and get to my squishy center pieces or my back line here. So by doing this, I have a formation that can take up, again, a large front line, and I have the ability to flex any of my other backline or midline units in those pockets as needed. So with my front line here secure, I do have my flanks now secure with some units that are going to be helping me out with anti-large. And we'll discuss those a little bit more in the unit type section, but just kind of keep those in mind for now. And these are going to be my halberdiers. They're going to anchor my line on the left and right side, helping to kind of prevent any large monsters or cavalry from charging into the flanks of my formation. Now back behind that, we have our midline, which is going to be comprised of our range units. And our range units are both handgunners, which are gunpowder style units that are using guns, and handguns is explicitly here because they're called handgunners. And then we also have crossbowmen. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind when it comes to your ranged line is take a look at your terrain. The terrain in this case is the Altdorf outskirts. It's the name of this map. You can see it's kind of hilly and raised. Well, as it is right now, if anything were to charge my front line of greatswords, my handgunners would have difficulty firing into them. They have to make sure that they are on a somewhat of a little bit of an incline above their front line so they can get a clear firing arc. Since they just fire in a straight line, they'll be able to fire at things down range, but as they close the distance, your handgunners, you'll notice, will stop firing. So be mindful of that. But when it comes to units that have this icon, that have any kind of archery, like a crossbowman or your high elf archers, your wood elf archers, anything like that, they will fire in an arc over your front line and into the opponent. So if you do have any handgunners and you've noticed them stop firing, that is why that happens. Now behind our firing line is our backmost line, and that is comprised of our artillery pieces, our great cannons, 2 of those, as well as a mortar. Now, the mortar, again, fires in a large arc up over your units and into your enemy. The mortar also does a lot of splash damage, allowing you to really do a lot of damage to units like high elves, dark elves, dwarfs, things that have condensed, nice, standardized regimental units, again, very similar to your Empire faction. This will also work well against things that require a lot of units to attack, such as Greenskins or your Skaven. So that's your big difference between your mortar and your Great Cannon. But your Great Cannon at the same time is a more direct shot, an anti-large shot or AP shot. So if you're shooting at, say, a dragon or a giant or something mounted on another big beast, your Great Cannon is going to be shooting a direct line at it. So, as thus, just like your hand cannons, you're going to want to make sure you have a nice clear line of sight to wherever you're shooting. That's going to enable your artillery pieces to really fire onto your units. Now, one thing I do want to cover when it comes to your range units, as well as your artillery units, is this little button right here. It's called Guard Mode. When you click this button, units ordered into Guard Mode will hold their position and will not pursue disengaged targets. This is particularly important, especially if you give a Great Cannon or a range unit a specific target to fire at. If anything that enters the range, the firing arc of, say, these handgunners, they'll just fire at will. But if you right-click a unit and have it specifically fire at it, then that unit will commit to killing that unit entirely. It will chase it down and keep firing as long to keep it in range. If you have Guard Mode on, it will no longer pursue your target. It'll only shoot what's in range of it. So this prevents your gun line and your back line from getting moved all over the place as you kind of focus fire your targets. Another icon I want to talk about is specifically with your range unit is this. Toggle skirmish mode. More often than not, you want to make this by default will be on like this. I would recommend unclicking that so that your units will not push back if their front line gets compromised or your flanks get compromised or your back line. This can sometimes push them into your enemy and it's not very fun. The AI is not very intelligent when it comes to skirmish mode. So when it comes to strictly your firing line, I would take skirmish mode off and manually move them. In addition, you do have toggle fire at will. I would almost always keep this on unless you don't want them to fire at, say, a front line of Bretonnian peasants or Skaven slaves where it would be wasted. Now, two more things I want to talk about before we move out of basic formations are my cavalry. Now, my cavalry here is in the very back. I've positioned them there because now they can react defensively to wherever they need to go. Has the front line been compromised and do they need to act and jump into the front line and help out? Well, now they can do that. Okay, are there elements that are coming around on this flank and they can now countercharge them? They are kind of a secondary force to reinforce and hold your back line and at the same time act as a reactionary force to any big pockets of your front line or flanks that are failing. Now, our last little unit I want to go over now is our Vanguard unit here in these Pistoliers. Now, I typically recommend that you put any kind of Vanguard unit together, unless you are playing high-level multiplayer and you know exactly what you're doing with them. If you're just playing campaign and you want to get a better idea, keep them together, keep them about a little bit in front of your army. You don't necessarily need to have them all the way up here because now they're out of firing range and support of your heroes for healing, of your other elements just to get support from your firing range and from your artillery. So don't get too crazy with your Vanguard units unless you have a lot of them to support each other. This way, you have them a little bit in front of your army, you can get eyes on the opponent quickly, and you can have them flank artillery pieces by sweeping around, whatever you so wish. You can be pretty sneaky and place them all the way in the back corner here, but unless you have something very fast and hard-hitting and you have a specific strategy built around that, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just if you're just new to the game, just place them here, kind of get a feel for when they're going to be useful for you. Now, most of your Vanguard cavalry, or fast cav as it is sometimes called, will more often than not be ranged. And in that case, having skirmish mode on them can be a boon, but it also can be disadvantageous towards you as well. So be mindful of this. Don't just always turn it on. I would look to see how you want to use them. If you want to spend a lot of time micromanaging them and making them go to wherever place you want them to move, then by all means, keep it off. it'll force you to, it'll drop some of the movement commands that you give them, and they will stop being useful for you. But if you just want to give them a command and have them do their own thing and have the enemy chase them, then just keep it on and you won't ever have to worry about it. But that covers basic formations for you, so you have a good way of how to kind of line up your forces across the battlefield. As you're playing through the game, you might not have great swords. You might just have Empire swordsmen, or men-at-arms if you're Bretonnia, or High Elf spearmen. You just pretty much always want to have a front line that has a little distance between them. It doesn't need to be this great. It can be a little bit closer and tighter depending on how you're playing or what your style is or what the difficulty is. It doesn't need to be just like this. This is just a way to kind of give you an idea. And I wanted to give you guys an example of stuff that I think is highly relatable to. And you can get a really good idea from just even looking at this simple screenshot right there. This gives you a pretty good idea of how to set up your army. One thing we'll notice before we close this section out is that I have spearmen guarding my artillery pieces, and I've put them directly on top of the actual artillery piece. So if any bats, any flying units come to harass my artillery pieces, those spearmen will come to reinforce them. Well, let's move on to another section of the battle mechanics to help give you a better idea on how to really get better at playing the battle map for Total War Warhammer 2. Now, since we've discussed basic battle formations, a good little segue would be talking about control groups. Now, control groups are a great way to just kind of keep all of your elements centered around 1 or 2 or 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7 buttons. In my case, I've got my front line at 1, my firing line at 2, my artillery back line at 3, our cavalry at 4, and then my skirmish cav at 5, as well as my leadership elements at 6 and 7. Now, what this does is it locks them into a group that you can then move together all at once. And you're probably wondering, what does this little padlock mean? Well, right now, let's say if I take this group of Empire Knights, you can see that they're spaced out as they are. If I just right click, it's just going to put them together. Now, my front line, let's press this padlock. Now, it's going to lock that formation that they're set in. So if I right click, it keeps them in the exact formation I want them to be in. So if you have set up, again, a very complex or intricate formation like that front line, you want to lock that control group. The additional benefit of locking control groups is that you can also have that entire front line charged simultaneously without having to right-click them individually. And we'll get to that with the actual fight, but that's another big benefit of that. So the control groups are a very quick and easy, transparent thing. There's not really a whole ton to go into. My recommendation for your control groups is I've done 1 through 4, 5, and 6 here. Try and keep your control groups to, I'd say 5 at the most. That way it's just easier for you to kind of do with one hand, and you don't have to reach across the keyboard to get to 6 and 7 like I currently have. And this is just me just trying to show you all these nice little neat control groups. Now, with your control groups too, you just kind of keep everything in one succinct area, so it's just a lot easier for you to kind of move around the battlefield. And it's also easier for you to give commands. So if I want all of my range units to fire on one unit, I'm going to press 2, then I'm going to right click on that unit. It's just a lot easier for you to micro a little bit less. Now, you might just want to do all in 1 or 2 control groups until you get the hang of it. Like, okay, all my range units, I want them in 1. Or 1 total control group. So let's just put them together in control group 2. All right, now I want all of my cavalry here. I want them in the same control group. So just kind of work with this as you see necessary. You don't need to copy this format. Some people don't even use control groups. It's not like this is the best way to play, but I wanted to show you how to at least use them so that you understand how they can help you out with your formations. Now that we've covered those control groups, let's go into your unit selection and how to move things around the battlefield a little bit easier with those unit selections. So you can see from this, we've got 2 sets of units here, right? We've got our Pistoliers, and then we've got our Empire Knights. And you can press Control A to highlight all of your units. You can press Shift to highlight just certain ones. You can hold Control to select certain ones manually. It's just like you're moving through a file browser in your Windows actual OS. But an interesting thing here is you might have mixed sets of units like this one here, my Control Group 1. Well, let's say I want to have these cav elements on the outside of our Pistoliers. Well, if I drag the card all the way to the left, outside of my Pistoliers on the left and right side, and then I select this one, then to the right, basically you don't want to go to the left. You don't want to go Empire Knights this way. You want to do Empire Knights these Empire Knights, always to the right, always to the right. Then if I drag this box out, then they're gonna reassemble. They were Empire Knight, Pistolier, Pistolier. Now it is Knight, Knight, Pistolier, Pistolier, representing the same thing you have on the cards. So moving these cards around, again, let's just stagger it like this. Drag out to the right, boom. We can see Pistolier, Knight, Pistolier, Knight. And you've got a lot of different ways you can do this, right? If you hold down right click, you can drag your box here and have a really thin line, which I almost never ever recommend, or a full drawn out line, sometimes called spaghetti lining, which I always recommend. Now, that might be different for your firing range, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, with this, you also have additional ways to move your selections around. You can hold down the Alt button and then hold down left click, and you can just drag them around. It's easy to just kind of, you probably saw me do this earlier when I was moving just my front line. Just like that, it's just a lot easier for you to kind of move sets of units in certain specific formations that you want to keep them in that might not be in the same control group. So if I say I want to move this whole front line, that is all in 2 different control groups. I've highlighted them all, hold down left, oops, messed that up, but I hold down Alt and you can just kind of move them around like that. I unfortunately double clicked and it messed it up a little bit, but it still kind of gets the gist of it. You also have another set of movement capabilities. You can hold down Alt and right click, and it creates the anchor point in the center of where your right click was versus the standard anchor point, which is just where you right click. So here, that's your standard anchor point. If I hold down Alt and right click, it's moving from the center and doing that. So it allows you to get, let's just say, this whole entire army. Let's just put it in one control group. Let's lock that formation. Let's hold down Alt, right click here. I can now have the whole army set with that center anchor point to move there. So again, to do that, you want the whole army and you want the whatever kind of formation you want to do. It has to be in the same control group. Hold down Alt, press right click, and it will kind of pivot on that anchor point so you can get however you want the army to be set up. So there are a lot of these little tricks and trades here. You can even use Shift, do more of that. So Shift and Alt to kind of get a different formation style. So it sounds kind of daunting, but pretty much using Alt and right click or Alt and left click to move things around is going to allow you to just get your armies in position the exact way you want them. Like, okay, I really want this guy to be this much closer, or I want these dudes to overlap onto that. That's how you really kind of get around that, is using that Alt left click to just manually drag things into place. I think it's a little bit easier to really get the formation you want set by using those Alt and Shift buttons to the most of your advantage. And you'll even be using those Shift buttons in the movement portion once the battle gets started, which we'll cover in a bit. One last thing, though, I did mention was formation lines, right? So let's take a look here. We've got our front line of great swords. I want them out as far as possible. I'm holding down right click and I'm dragging it out all the way. This is because it allows for the unit to have maximum coverage on another unit. It'll match up pretty much 1-to-1. If I have the unit like this in a blockier formation and my opponent has their unit in a larger formation, you can see here that the flanks of that unit will actually connect into the sides of my flank. They'll wrap around them and they'll have more of their units in contact with mine, doing more damage technically over time. So really make sure you're, again, quote unquote, spaghetti lining your frontline troops or any kind of melee troops, period. Now, as far as your archers or any ranged units, you want to bring them out to about 3 lines. You can go down to 4 if you so want, but this allows your units to pivot easily rather than being out this far and having to make a much larger wheel. If you compare these two right here, you can see that you now have this much more unit to pivot because we've spaghetti lined them all the way out. So make sure you have them at a nice kind of dense, even 3x3 kind of formation. They'll be able to pivot and turn in place a little bit easier. You can really go dense on this, but you don't really need to. I'd say 3 lines is pretty much ideal for you on your range units. Anything else, though, for the most part, drag out to its max formation style, so that you don't get wrapped up. You can really engage the most units as possible and really benefit the most from your formations. As we talked about it a little bit earlier, I think it's a good time now to go into different unit types and the icons that correspond to them. Now, if we take a look here, we can see that we've got these 2 foot soldiers, these infantry units. They are considered, their entity and unit size right here tells us that they are infantry sized. This little icon is a small little dude, so I know that they are infantry sized. Now, when we look at the great swords and we look at their weapon strength, we also see that they deal what's called armor piercing damage, or AP damage. They're going to do very well against things with high armor. Even themselves, they have high armor. Now, AP damage is factored directly into the unit. It skips over armor and goes right to melee defense, I believe. I might be a little wrong on that, but basically the point of AP is bypassing the armor value, which would otherwise negate both missile fire and melee attacks. In addition, you'll see this other icon. It says bonus versus infantry. This will allow greatswords to do a lot of damage towards other infantry style units. By hovering over this bar right here in weapon strength, you can get a full breakout of how their damage is calculated. You've got just 9 raw weapon damage, but then you've got 23 armor piercing damage that is going to go directly past that armor, then 10 damage that is going to be attributed towards infantry. So your greatswords obviously are going to do a lot of damage towards other infantry. That's their main primary role. This is, again, me just explaining how these base infantry unit types really work. Now, in addition to your greatswords, you also have stuff like spearmen or halberds or even polearms that help you out with an anti-large score. Remember this icon right there? Well, let's take a look at it, compare it to our greatswords. See how it's a little bit bigger of an icon now? So we know that it's a smaller sword and a bigger guy versus a bigger sword and a smaller guy. So we know that these guys do anti-large damage, meaning they're going to do more damage towards cavalry, large beasts, anything that has a large icon, which we'll show in just a second. So we know that these guys do 8 weapon damage, 20 AP damage by passing armor yet again, and 16 bonus versus large. So look to these icons to get an idea of where units should be placed in your formations. I have my halberdiers on the flank to help out with any kind of cavalry or large beasts. You can even have them behind your front line to deal with large beasts that plummet through your front line. So use these things advantageously to you depending on what you're going to be fighting against. Maybe if you're playing against beastmen, you're going to deal with a large amount of beasts, or same thing with dark elves, or maybe even the vampires, which have access to tons of large monsters. So really kind of use the right tool for the job. It just depends on what you're playing faction-wise and what you're going to be playing against in your campaigns. And as you play through, you'll discover what really makes the most sense for you, but I want to at least show you what these things do. There is another thing I want to go into with almost all spearmen have this, and it's called charge defense. Now, halberdiers in this case have charge defense against all. That means that they will negate the charge bonus, this field right here, from any and all units. More often than not, if we take a look at a unit of spearmen, bring them right here, it just says charge defense versus large, meaning that this will negate the charge bonus of any large unit, which again we'll show the icon of in just a second. And what does that really mean? So charge defense works in a cone. It does not work in a 360 radius around your unit. Charge defense means that if anything attacks from this angle, notice how I haven't covered the front flank. All right, no, it's actually more like this. But this thing's not the most accurate. More like that. Kind of that front angle. Anything that charges you directly on, you will be able to negate their charge bonus. But if anything charges from the rear, the flank directly, or the front flank, this front corner right like that, it will still get its charge bonus. And in order for you to get that charge defense, your unit has to not be moving. That's what's called bracing. So if my unit is running up the field, it is not braced. You have to press backspace, which will stop your unit, which will halt it. It's this one right here, halt, backspace. So that's the infantry units real quick. Here is our Empire Knights, and our Empire Knights are large units. This is going to be anything that is in the cavalry kind of subject, anything that or category, anything like a large individual single entity beast, such as Big Daddy Carl Franz here on his Griffin. He is a large single entity unit. So charge defense versus large will attribute to these things. Charge defense versus all will count as every other unit in the game. So one thing I want to talk about real quick with Empire Knights that you did not see on the other units, because I did not choose any units with shields because I'm a moron, is this right here. it's called shielded. Typically, any unit with a shield will have either a bronze or a silver shield. Bronze shields do this, says that unit has a shield and will block 30% of all small arms missile fire hitting from the front. So if they take a cannon shot, it is not factored into this. Only stuff like bows and arrows, handguns, small arms fire. The silver shield, I think, is a 55% negate or block chance on those small arms fires. So be really mindful of how you're setting up your forces, because again, you're not going to want to have a big old front line of large creatures, because you might be up against an army that has anti-large at its disposal to shut down those large creatures. So as you really kind of get a feel for how your army is composed and your opponent, you'll get a better idea of where units should be placed. As you can see here, my front line is composed of anti-infantry attacking units with the flanking elements being secured by my anti-large AP elements, which will shut down cavalry and large beasts like we talked about earlier. But now that we've gone into just basically the unit types, we can start to talk a little bit more about how this will all play together once we start this battle pretty soon. Now, I've deliberately started this next portion in the trees because we're going to talk about some of the battlefield options that you can edit using the spacebar. So if we hold down space, get this little thing that pops up on the right here. Click that and it gives you a bunch of different little interesting menu options to choose from. Now, I've pretty much set this to what I think the default was. I can't remember 100%, but the biggest thing to turn on, if you take away nothing from this video, take this one thing away. Hide foliage. Boom. Now I can see a lot more of my battlefield map. And I also want to click that button so that it's always hidden. This allows you to sweep through the map. I mean, the foliage will pop back, but I can now see what's going on in this forest way, way easier. Otherwise, I'm going like this and I'm kind of flying blind. Doing this will allow you to really get a good idea for what's moving through the forests, how you can counter it, and how you can get in front of it. In addition, unit threat level is toggled on. I would untoggle that. It's never really going to be pertinent for you. Unit icons, I would always keep this on. That's the little icons above. I mean, otherwise it looks like this, but if you hold down spacebar, it can give you a good idea of where they're at. If you press the lock button, even if you have spacebar unclicked, you can see them. I kind of think it adds a little clutter visually, so I have it unclicked. You also have unit stat bars, which is this one right here. I unclick that. Oh, that's that one right there. Sorry, I thought that was that's the unit status icon. My bad. The unit stat bars is going to be their health and their leadership. I would again always have that on. And lastly, you've got your unit status icons. This is going to be their vigor. Are they fleeing? So on and so forth. This is by default how it is. You can go ahead and lock it if you so wish, so you can always see it. I don't think you really need that level of transparency on your units, especially if you're just starting. It'll become a little bit more pertinent towards the end. You do have unit banners. I think it's so huge to have these on. It's like a huge centerpiece of Warhammer, let alone Total War Warhammer, so I do have that there. You can have tooltip effects if you so wish. That's when you hold over this and it shows you all the confident and fresh. I like to keep that on. But there's one thing. Oh, there's also firing arcs, which are your individual firing arcs. I think you don't need to have it always on, but I think just having it so if you hold spacebar, you can quickly see where the arcs are is pretty important. You always want movement paths on 100%, man. It's going to really help you pinpoint where all your units are moving, because sometimes you'll issue a lot of commands and not remember where things are. Character aura is also as helpful because it gives you an idea. If I look over here at the character aura for Karl Franz, I can see where his leadership aura is helping out my army. And then the last one, which is default off. Now, I actually recommend turning it on and locking it and keeping it on. Now, this does add a lot of visual clutter, and the reason I think it's a very important command or our option is if you have any spell that is a wind-based spell, you can better align it with the way your army is clashed into battle. And I'll show you when we actually jump into the battle itself how these units are going to look once they actually meet. You'll see all of my units over here, then just a big old sea of red. So I know exactly where to aim at my wind spells when that time comes. If you don't really want to dabble with wind spells and you don't really like it, it's not going to hurt you to shut it off. You can hold down space and see exactly where people are anyway. So that's just kind of like a little quick tip that I learned recently that's helped me out a lot in my spells and abilities. But I think the battlefield options is something that people don't really touch on or really know much about, but I think it adds a lot of strength to understanding the battle map in a better way. Another subject I should have probably touched on in the unit types is the actual stat card of your unit. Each one of these items means a number of different things, and I've kind of hinted on it or talked about it a little bit in discussing the unit types, but I feel like going through all of them really quick is definitely a necessary little tidbit here. So let's take a look at our greatswords, and we can see our unit stat card here on the left. We can see two rows here as well. These are any kind of persistent effects that are created by the unit by some sort of special rules or anything that's just kind of innate in their profile. Like, so if we take a look over here at Karl Franz, which we'll take a look at in our next section, he has a number of abilities that are active for him: siege attacker, missile resistance, causes fear, causes terror. One thing I do want to say about fear and terror: if your unit causes fear, it is thus immune to fear. If it causes terror, it is also immune to fear and terror. See right there, units that cause terror are immune to terror and or fear. But I just wanted to point this out real quick. So these are pretty much things that are always active on your character. Then this secondary line, which is currently doesn't have anything populated in it, it will actually have any effects that are landed upon your character, either from abilities, spells, poisons, frostbite effects on units, anything like that. So if you see a unit that has poison and it attacks another unit, you will see the little poison icon appear here, as well as like it going from shaded to not shaded as it progresses through its cycle. Now, jumping back over here to the greatswords, we can see their stats: armor, leadership, speed, melee attack, melee defense, weapon strength, and charge bonus. I feel like the game does a pretty good job of explaining these, but again, I want to explain them real quick in the sake of making this video about the beginning portions of the game. So, armor, again, how resistant a unit is to missile fire and melee attacks. So it will be overall kind of negating the amount of damage that comes its way from raw weapon strength or missile damage. Now, this is then, of course, bypassed by AP, or armor piercing, as we've discussed earlier, but this is the armor value for your unit. Leadership, again, a little self-explanatory here. A unit with high leadership is less likely to rout in the face of danger. Leadership is improved by experience in battle. So as your units rank up, they will increase their leadership value. So right now it says base value 74. As you progress through your fight, if your unit is surrounded, if it's losing in combat, if other friends have routed off the table, if it's been flanked, if it's been attacked from the rear, you will start to see negative values in this column. So if you hover over this in the middle of battle, you will see this showing off the negative attributes that are affixed to the unit's leadership according to whatever the scenario is. Also, we have speed, pretty self-explanatory here. This is how fast a unit moves. Obviously, infantry will have around a base speed around 28 to sometimes even like 36 on the high end. But then you take a look at cavalry. Heavy cav typically has around 66 to 78, depending on what kind of cav it is. And then light skirmisher cav will have anywhere from 90 to 105 if there's some sprightly high elves. Now, taking a look too, we have got melee attack and melee defense. These are probably the two most important stats to look at as far as the combat effectiveness of an individual unit. Most people just kind of look at these values overall. So, melee attack is the likelihood in which your hit will land. This determines the chance of a successful hit on the enemy when the unit is engaged in melee. Battle-hardened troops will gain experience through melee, improving this skill. If you want to think of this in the terms of Warhammer's tabletop, melee attack would be equivalent to your weapon skill, the likelihood to hit your opponent. Greatswords have a 32. Not very likely, but pretty good as far as other rank and file goes. I can compare them to halberdiers who have a 26. Now, melee defense, this determines the chance of a unit being hit whilst in melee. So, if again you want to compare this to Warhammer Tabletop, this is kind of like your wound roll, the whether or not the hit actually lands and wounds you. A higher melee defense has a higher likelihood that the hit will not actually score against your armor and thus your health of your unit. Then we've got your weapon strength, which we've kind of gone over a little bit here. The damage caused by a unit's weapon, split between base and armor piercing. Armor piercing damage is always applied. Base damage can be blocked by armor. So 9 damage is going to be blocked by armor, 23 will always be applied, and 10 bonus versus infantry will be applied as well. Hovering over the text or this little portion will give you a breakdown and allow you to see exactly what the damage attributes are of your weapon strength. Then lastly, we have charge bonus. This increases a unit's melee attack and damage when charging. Now, unfortunately, I don't have an exact scale for how this works. I don't know if 18 charge bonus is 18 melee attack and 18 weapon strength bonus, and I've been unable to really drill down on this, but just to suffice to say, the higher the charge bonus, obviously the more charge damage you will inflict. Empire Knights, for example, have a 48 charge bonus. Almost the entire dwarf roster has a charge bonus sub 10. So higher charge bonus means you're going to be doing more damage on your charge. And it gives you an idea of how your unit should be used. So clearly, greatswords are good on the initial, decent enough on the initial charge, but after that, they're meant to stay in prolonged combat. I can see here my Empire Knights are really, warping through the ground, are really meant to do their shock damage and then just kind of rue the day after that, just kind of go back and forth. So jumping back over here to our greatswords, as I just warp around the map here, we have just the profile for our melee infantry, but there is a separate profile for anything with ranged included into it. So I have our handgunners. This would include artillery, any kind of missile cavalry, or anything that is up in the sky that also has, like Hawk Riders also have a ranged profile. Some lords have a ranged profile, but let's take a look real quick at ranged. It adds 3 more lines to this. So they have an ammunition amount, which is the total amount of shots that they can, well, volleys more or less that they can fire. The amount of ammunition this unit can carry into battle. Once this has been exhausted, the unit will be forced to switch to melee to continue fighting. After the battle, and ammunition is fully replenished. You can force a unit, though, that is ranged to engage in melee combat. You see this button right here? You will press F, and this unit will now, rather than when you right-click something, rather than going to shoot the unit, it will actually engage in melee. And this will be a difference between a crosshair icon and a sword icon. So unclicking that, going back to normal. We also see the unit's range. 145 is a pretty damn good range. And there's nothing pretty, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. It's pretty straightforward. A long range enables you to hit enemies from a distance, but weapons are still more accurate at shorter ranges. This is especially true for Skaven. As you close in distance with, say, their miniguns, then their guns actually have a higher likelihood of hitting. I'd say it's most evident in Skaven than it is for other races, because you just kind of can visually see that the tracer fire on those weapons are actually making contact. And lastly, missile damage. It's the same way the weapon strength is done. Breaks out your missile damage, your armor piercing damage, and then the reload time, which is pretty important here. So your reload time, basically all 3 of these numbers get factored into this missile damage number right here. It's not just 5 plus 17 like it is for your weapon strength. Your reload time is going to be a significant factor in what that total average missile damage is. And it says at the bottom here, the damage value is shown over 10 seconds. Damage caused by missile attack, split between base and armor piercing. Armor piercing damage is all applied. Base damage can be blocked by armor. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what these individual values mean on the left side. Just to kind of go over 3 other ones. These are your total entity size and then the total amount left in the unit. So on the left, you can see how many you've got right now versus how many there were to begin with. And then you have your total kills that this unit has inflicted throughout battle, and then the experience that they have, as well as any kind of little caveats that the unit might have, like say, armor piercing, anti-large, charge defense versus all, armored, armor piercing, anti-infantry, armor piercing missiles. It just depends on what you're playing with. But again, hopefully this gives you a better idea of how that unit card works. Now, one of the last things I want to go into before we touch on actual combat itself are the legendary lords, their abilities and their spells. So by taking a look here at Karl Franz, who is not a hybrid caster lord or anything like that, he's strictly a melee character, I see all of his abilities here on the left. And from it, I get a pretty good breakdown of what goes on. If I click this ability, I know that I'm going to, it's a type, augment in an area, only acts on target when in the area. Its duration is going to be 39 seconds. Its target is myself as well as allies in the range, and that range is 40 meters. It also gives me the effects of this ability, and in the upper right hand corner it shows me that it has a 120-second recycle. And as I just kind of move down here, these little icons will give you an idea of what's going on. So if the triangle is filled in like this, it's only a self ability. If it's not filled in, it's going to be self plus allies in the radius around it. So these 2 abilities are only going to help Karl Franz, whereas these 2 abilities will help out people in a 40-meter radius around you. Now, what if you have a hybrid lord or a caster? Well, I have that right here. You can see here that I've got these 2 abilities, This is going to be an augment of the winds, as it says, enhances the flow of magic in favor of yours and your allies' spellcasters. Then this one, which is going to be a direct damage magic missile type spell. And again, hovering over it tells me type magic missile, target enemy, range of 100 meters, and it does moderate magical damage and fire damage, good penetration, good against armor, effective at close range, so on and so forth. Now there's this other wheel on the right side, though, that we'll also talk about in two different phases. One are the spells themselves. So from the top one, 12 o'clock, all the way over to 11 o'clock, you can see all of your spells ranked 1 through 6. Now they can easily be pressed using Alt plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you don't remember that, just take a look at the very bottom there. Shortcut Alt plus 6. Right click to view the spell in browser. Now, this tells us here that it's an explosion spell. This tells us it's a healing spell. This is the same one where the augment is going to be on the self or ally. This tells us that it's going to be, again, self, ground, or ally, depending on how you cast it. Healing on just one unit itself or yourself. So this is a AoE, area effect regeneration. This is a regeneration specific target. And this last one here is a direct damage spell. So look at those little icons to give you an idea of what the spell is on a fly. And you remember Alt 1 through 6 can help you use these abilities quickly. Now lastly is our Winds of Magic. So right now we have 11 out of 30 Winds of Magic. The way that works is Winds of Magic are your mana, your resources that you will then use these abilities towards. You know that Awakening of the Wood costs 6 Winds of Magic to use, and it takes 31 seconds to recycle. Okay, well that's going to put us down to 5 Winds of Magic. Our power reserve is how much Winds of Magic we can total regenerate over the course of the battle. So in this case, our power reserve is 60. So right now we have 11 out of 30, and it will never get higher than 30 until I kind of use those Winds of Magic up. But once I use them up, my power reserves will then come into place. So if you think of it this way, if I were to just not do anything with my Winds of Magic, I would recharge 1 power per 6 seconds. And let's just say, over the course of like 2 minutes, math on the fly is just not happening right now. I would be up to my full 30 Winds of Magic, thus reducing so 9 into 20, 10, so 19. So it would take 50 or 41 total power reserve left. And as I continue to use magic, it draws from that power reserve that I'm able to regenerate. And that recharge will then take longer. In the beginning of the game, your recharge is higher. But as you use more magic and as your power reserve drops, that recharge rate drops as well. So at the beginning, 1 power per 6 seconds, but at the end of the battle, it might be 1 power per 58 seconds or 75 seconds. It just depends on how much power reserve you have remaining. And you can use abilities like this Power Stone, which will increase your power reserves and your recharge rate. Arcane Conduit is another good one, stuff like that kind of helps counter that. But that kind of covers your legendary lords, your abilities, and your spells. This is one that's going to be very homebrewed to whichever faction you're playing, but at least wanted to explain them on a very high level so you could really get into the nitty-gritty of these. So let's actually play this battle out. Let's have it go into its full motions, and I'll show you guys how to move around the map, how to put a lot of these things together. All right, so here we are. We're going to press start battle here. We're playing against the Beastmen. So again, I might lose this, but I just want to show you guys how to do some quick moving around the battlefield and help you out with some stuff. So let's start off quickly, pressing P. We'll pause the game, and let's take a look in this upper right corner. We've got 3 or 4 buttons here, right? 4 buttons, 5 buttons. I can count, I swear to God. So 1 is pause. Obviously, we're paused right now. Then we can click slow motion. Everything will start slowing down. You can see our mortar shells going. You can see the Cygors, boulders. About to slam into our great swords, and there they go, doing some damage. We've got normal speed, and we've got forward, and then fast forward. So we can already see I'm already kind of caught out of position here. We'll put these guys on skirmish, and I want to show you another really great way to move around the battlefield. That is the shift button. So hold down shift, then hold down right click. You can see the little path thing appear on the icon on our cursor. I can hold down right click, and I can draw a path, and my unit will now move in that path. So this is really great if you want to have these cavalry units get a really good flank around the sides like that. You can use it to really kind of get a really good position on things. And it's a little bit more fire and forget. If you have something that wants to use a very specific path to get in range with your opponent, a good way to do it. So we're going to go ahead and unpause. We'll do things at normal speed. If you're brand new to the game, my recommendation to you is to pause as much as you need to. Pause as you need to issue your commands, make the most sense of what you're trying to do. Don't feel like you need to play this game at normal speed if you're brand new. There's a lot of things going on. And when the game first starts out, you might not have as many units, so it might be easy to move around the battlefield. As you get better though, I would challenge you to pause less and slow-mo more. You get a lot of the benefits of a little bit increased reaction time, and then as you get even more comfortable, remove slow-mo entirely and then just play and play. No one plays in fast forward. You don't have to be crazy here. You can see my archers are starting to already shoot into these Butchers of Kalkengard, these Minotaurs with shields. Let's take a look at those guys real quick. They do have silver shields like we were talking about earlier. If I hover over this, it's going to tell me 55% block on those small arms damage. Now, another big thing I want to do is show you how this locked charge works. So if I lock this guy, lock this whole entire control group, and I want them to all attack across the line, I don't want to manually select each and every one. So if I unpause, I'll just put it in slow-mo, hold down Alt, then double right click, then they will all charge. You can see right there. They're all going to try and find a unit that is adjacent to them to charge into. Or, I'm sorry, parallel to them, not adjacent. And they'll go right towards that unit. So these guys are both going to charge this one because they're the closest parallel unit, then just down the line, down the line, down the line, down the line. Typically, you know, you want to take these larger monsters, like these Chaos Spawns and these Butchers of Kalkengard, and you want to put your Halberdiers onto them. You might even want to brace them depending on the situation. We're going to take our greater cannons. We're going to have that focus on... Oh my god, they've got 3 Cygors. This is a disgusting build. So I just let the computer create this. So we're it's a little bit stacked against us right now. So I can see for our firing arcs, cannons are both in range of these Cygors. We're going to have both of them shoot there. And typically, you want to take all of your range units and have them fire at one unit at a time and move down the line as needed. This way, you maximize their effectiveness and don't just spread your range fire. Now, remember with our backline, with our Empire Knights, I'm going to take them and kind of help out with these units over on the flanks. So we're going to take our Pistoliers. We're going to wrap them around them. I'm going to take my Empire Knights and wrap them around. Those are some Centaurs. They do have great weapons that have AP, so it's actually not going to be very advantageous of a matchup. But again, we're just trying to have some fun here and show you guys how this all kind of goes together. I'm going to take now my leader. Ooh, look at that. Look how they just bulldoze right into those great swords. Great swords are not really meant to take these charges from these large creatures. But I'm going to take my leader. I'm going to go right for their leader. Right there. I'm going to pause again. And I'm pausing a lot just to show you guys how I'm using some of these abilities. Well, I have a lot of damage going on here. So I'm going to use Earthblood. And I can see that the pulsing unit right there, the great swords, they're going to get hit by this Earthblood, which is good. But I want to try and get it. So it'll get just about in between both of them, and it doesn't look like I can quite get it. Gonna get one. Basically, it's got to touch that unit flag more or less. So if I just kind of do it here, we'll be able to get... We'll do it here. This way we'll get these 2 units. That's going to pop down, and it's going to help those 2 units out. Remember, my Winds of Magic are going to start being used down as well. We use Dwellers of Below to get that right there. I'll go to slow-mo so you guys can follow this a little bit better. These Butchers of Kalkengard are starting to push through that front line. So we're going to get our... We're going to get our Spearmen to them. Now, when you have a situation like this, real quick, our backline, our midline is compromised. So I'm going to take these handgunners and I'm going to move them over here. And I'm going to take these archers and I'm going to move them over here. This will allow my units to now enfilade onto whatever unit has now charged into them. So by doing this, I free up the unit that's being attacked, and the other unit doesn't get compromised as easily. You can see here that we're really kind of doing whatever we can to even the odds. Again, I didn't really build this army out very well. I just kind of smashed it all together. And we are definitely paying the price for it right now. Got as many units as we can. It looks like our Winds of Magic are very slow. You can see we only have 2 Winds of Magic, so we can't use a lot of these abilities. Getting in there, we're going to use all of our really heavy damage dealing abilities, these things are going to increase our damage a lot, so we'll be able to kill this Beast Lord. If we kill that Beast Lord, it'll really help us out with cracking the leadership of the dreaded Beastmen here. Getting these guys into range. Everything's kind of moving around. Halberdiers are attacking these Chaos Spawns, which is very good. Handgunners here are going to be shooting into these Korok's Man Rippers, and Karl Franz is going to hopefully continue to do damage over there. And we do have this blast spell we can drop down. We're going to drop it down right here on this Ungor Herd. This is a bound ability. It's a scroll we're going to use, and it's going to do some damage to these. Hopefully, stuff. The Empire Knights are not really a great use in this matchup. I more built this army to display certain things, so I apologize that this is becoming a kind of a lackluster situation where I'm losing. When the goal of this was to show you how to not lose. So yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. That'll shoot this magic missile out over here. That shoots that right there. Does some damage. Now you see, I had them attack something over here, and because they ran out of line of sight, they moved into combat because I did not have them on guard. So I did not listen to my own advice right there. Handgunners are getting compromised over here. We have our spearmen trying to hit those Senegors, which is good because the Senegors do count as large targets. Halberdiers are over here fighting these Minotaurs with great weapons, which is good too. We're about to kill their leadership here. That's pretty good. But unfortunately, take a look at that, man. Senegor is just ripping through our back line. We do have another unit of spearmen, though, so we can help out with the situation. Oopsie, spearmen. Great Cannon can continue to fire onto these Cygors. You can see that Karl Franz is doing a good job of hunting down their leadership. Our Halberdiers are doing a good job of just kind of dealing with these larger larger disgusting creatures in the Chaos Spawn. Bring lots of our spearmen into this fight. It can get kind of hectic, so you kind of have to just take it in stride. We're playing in slow-mo, so it's a little bit like cheating right now, you know, since we're like, oh, okay, well, I can really see what's going on. But again, this is just to kind of show you where my thought process is in selecting some of these choices, what I'm doing. I'm sending my spearmen to fight these Senegors, which have compromised my backline. I'm using Karl Franz to continue to hunt the Beast Lord. That'll thus put out their leadership. Hunting the leadership of units or armies such as Beastmen or Greenskins or Skaven is a very strong move. It allows you to really get around the voluminous hordes of their army. You can see that a lot of their army is in tatters right now, which is pretty good for us. Those guys firing there. Let's get these guys moved back a little bit. We'll get our great swords into this engagement now. Oh man, look at these ravening little hordes of Razorgore herds. I'm going to try and shoot into them and do what we can. Another thing too, keep an eye on your map. Look at what units have fled and have now come back. So these Empire Knights did flee, so let's bring them back into the fight. Karl Franz continue to just hunt down that Beast Lord. Again, killing that leadership is going to be very huge for us. Want that kill right there. Get our Jade Wizard out of this engagement. It's not very favorable for him. Pull back our crossbowmen. Make sure they get in line or behind things. Handgunners, the same thing over here. Unfortunately, our artillery piece just got a pretty devastating charge right there, so we can't do a whole ton. Sometimes when you have these single entity units like this, that's actually a pretty good thing to point out. You see how there's a bunch of units around him? The single entity unit, which is Karl Franz, he's a single entity. There's only one in his unit. One of one, will often get distracted. How the AI works will just simply, oh, okay, well, I'm going to attack everything around me rather than the one set attack order I had. You can see over here, I'm spamming right click to get him to move out of this blob as fast as possible. I'm even going to click this button, increases his speed, increases his vigor, try and get him out of this little blob of combat. This will allow me to pull him up and into the air and hopefully live to fight another day, really. Let's get this guy over here. We'll use Awakening right there. So do some damage. These are all lightly armored. There it goes. Does tons of damage right there. And you can see this. This is the spell's effect. It's taking 10 seconds, and it'll last for those full 10 seconds. If it's a green bar that's going through here quickly, that's the spell itself casting. So this is it showing me that, okay, the spell will be present on the battlefield like this for 10 more seconds. We can take these Pistoliers and have them wrap around now. Get our Spearmen invested in this fight. Have them shoot into. Karl Franz is now back up in the air, which is really good. So we can have him kind of help out over here. Handgunners can just continue to fire into things. Our crossbowmen are... This little gauge right here is their ammunition, so we can see they've still got some ammunition to do stuff. Oh no, a devastating wind attack going to come out and just rip through my army over here. Do a ton of damage, unfortunately. We're starting to get some pretty... This has turned into quite a close fight, actually, to be totally honest. I'm going to use Karl Franz to just charge into these Razor Gore herds, try and crack them a little bit. We're out of melee units, unfortunately, so we can't do a ton of damage, but we're just trying to knock out what we can. Zygors are still shooting from down range, so that's been devastating this entire match, unfortunately. And when you do have like a unit like this, right, my mortar team is about to get hit, you can press this button, they'll drop the artillery piece. You'll see it here, one sec, as I unpause. So, that denotes that the artillery piece is dropped, and I can move them back here. This will allow my front line to kind of deal with any kind of units that charge into them. Of course, in this situation, we're a little bit drawn and quartered almost, so we have to just do what we can. We'll use that. We'll use stand your ground. That's going to help out with leadership and our melee defense. And again, I know these things because I've just been playing for so long, and I commentate on this stuff, so it's easier for me to kind of notice these on the fly. And I apologize if I am going through them a little quickly, because a lot of this will just come in time as you get familiar with the game. We'll just use a little heal here. Now watch here. See, 1 second, boom. Okay, now it's casted for 7 seconds. We're going to get regeneration. Karl Franz getting a rear charge now from these Senegors with great weapons, which will do a lot of damage to him, unfortunately. But hopefully now you kind of get a gist for the way things work. Again, the AI kind of had a pretty stacked army here with just 3 Zygors throwing boulders at me and a bunch of other terrifying stuff. Typically, if you fight against Beastmen, you'd have a much different front line even for Empire. So again, I just take this all with a grain of salt. I think I did the same thing for 3 Kingdoms, and it showed me losing anyway, but it's mainly me kind of showing you guys how to move around the battlefield succinctly, how to respond to things like having your midline compromised and creating an enfilade with your range units. So all these little tips and tricks you're not going to get right away. It's going to take you time to learn them, and you're going to lose a lot. And don't get discouraged, especially if you're playing multiplayer. Like, just slam your head against the wall enough times and you'll kind of pick it up. And I can't stress enough how much Total War Warhammer has a depreciating skill set in the micro, quote-unquote, management of your battles. It's really going to be up to you to play the game a lot, to really get the hang of how to play through some of these specific fights and how to maneuver your armies and really get that speed of action down. Once you really kind of get around that, your builds won't really matter as much. You can really kind of play with things a lot because you'll be able to respond to things so quickly. So the more you play the game, the more your quote-unquote micro will go up, and the more comfortable and the more fast you'll be able to react to a lot of the threats that come your way. So again, don't get discouraged when you're playing your combat map, and it's not a bad thing to slow down, to pause the game. Learn the game at your own pace. Some people might be playing on the highest difficulty, at never pausing and never slowing down. That's a personal challenge to them. I can't encourage you enough to really kind of take your pace with this game so you don't burn yourself out and get discouraged. As always, guys, though, if you have any questions, please go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. I do have a campaign mechanic guide that I'll link at the end of this that you can then check if you have not seen that guide either. I basically created this as a supplement to that one because it was so heavily requested in the comments section. So if you do have any other questions, again, please let me know in the comments below. As always, though, have a good one. Thank you for watching, and take care.